Welcome to 26 Black Night Film Festival, and you're with PÖFF TV and with the segment of Meet the Filmmakers. Uh, Today we are discussing a very interesting film from Switzerland, and the title of the film is The Land Within. And the film is doing the world premiere at PÖFF, and also it's at the first feature film competition, and it's the debut film of the director, and the director is here with us, Fisnik Maxville. Welcome, Fisnik.
Thank you.
Yeah. Uh, how do you like PÖFF, and how do you like the Tallinn city so far? What's your experience here?
Well, I just arrived last night, so the sun was not there anymore to welcome me, but I very much enjoy it. I must admit that it looks kind of like a Switzerland. You know, it's pretty cold.
Yeah.
It has this kind of old town vibe, but definitely there are more bars and restaurants than in Switzerland.
Yeah.
So that was really good.
Amazing. And like, yes, of course, with the sun, like, that's where we have the Black Night
Yes.
Film Festival here. Let's before we enter to your film this year, let's have a little chat about your journey, like from geopolitics to international relations, and like how did you step into filmmaking, and when did you know like you had to make films?
Right. I felt like making films since I was, a kid or maybe a teenager, because I had this big collection of VHS cassettes.
Okay.
You would get them for very cheap at the local store because they were transferring to DVD, so it was really easy to get them. But I never thought that filmmaking was actually a thing you can do for a living. So that's why I went on to study, up until my master's in geopolitics, then even worked, in different jobs linked to that before I said, you know what, I think I want to try this. And I've been writing scripts for years. I've been shooting small films for years. So at some point I said, you know what, I really want to try it.
Okay, that's very interesting, and like interesting entry to express yourself through cinema.
Yeah.
Okay, stepping into the film, like you've been making documentary films, like it's a very interesting film called Nostromo, which has a different scape of exploring, like your documentary film with that. And also your short film, Lost Exile, which was premiered at Locarno.
Yeah.
And was it like with your life, like you have lived an exile life, and how this concept came through, like was it a journey with your previous films, or like how did you enter to this concept?
Well, I think it's a good question because most of my films, I think, have at the center the question of trying to find one's place in the world, try to find one's place in society, etc., etc. And this is very much linked to the sort of exile life. But to me, I would say it's not something that I want to turn me into a victim, but rather living in an exile life for me, it's a very good dynamic to get me going and telling more stories, that are obviously linked to this. I did documentaries, yes, most of them, even though I started with the fiction film. And now this feature comes out, and it took 5 years to make it, 6 years to make it maybe. And in between, I wanted to make documentaries because I think that's very important. And you can make documentaries with much less money than you need for fiction, obviously.
Yeah. So when we see, like the opening scene of your film, where that government officials are being questioned, and then like your character Romeo, like Remo, like he goes through this thinking process. So like does that reflect with your experience? Like how did you develop that?
Well, Remo is very much alike when it comes to my life, I would say, because living more than 10 years in a country that doesn't give you papers, you don't have the right to go back to where you came from, even to visit, So there is this big distance that is created between you and your home country, and then at some point they give you, your nationality, and the only time you have to go back to your home country, you don't even have the nationality, you have another one. You become a different identity. And that's what happened to Remo in the film. And obviously he's very much linked to my own personal life.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about the structure of the film. because I could say like you're bringing chapters,
Yeah.
like you're making a very statement with multi-layered stories. It's like the wedding, the womb, the missing, and
Yeah.
the guilt. So when during your scripting process, how did you decide, like worked on this multi-layered, and like why you want to bring this chapter-wise story, like four
Yeah.
chapters?
So the story takes place over what 30, 40 years,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel, and somehow those chapters, the wedding, the child, the guilt,
Guilt,
and all this,
yeah.
I felt like those were somehow the most important chapters we have in our life. Maybe, I'm not
Yeah,
sure, and that's how basically I separated the film in those chapters, and each of those chapters goes back in time
Yeah.
to tell us about a specific thing that happened. It's usually just one scene
Yeah.
in the past that tells us why is the present like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how
Yeah.
that's how I thought about it.
And also like with when you're developing the character now, like as you said, like you relate to Remo, right? The film is like about Remo, but when I was watching it, I felt, even though it's about Remo, like you kept Una as the center pillar of the film.
Oh, very much.
Right,
Yeah.
so it's like it's about Remo, but you're mirroring, like reflecting through Una, like
Yeah.
like how did you work with the actors, because like with Luana's, like like it's a very different role she's playing, like
Yeah,
as a lead, like from the films which she has done like previously. So what was your discussion, and how did you work with these actors, and how did you develop these characters?
Yeah. Well, to start with, I think Remo and Una are very much on the same level when
Yes.
it comes to who's the main character of the film, and this I'm very happy with, because I guess in the script one was more or less, but this time I feel like they are much more equal in the film. And working with Luana was really interesting, because it was her first role
As a lead.
as a lead in Albanian, especially,
Right.
because she's also from
Yeah,
Kosovo,
yeah.
and it was just very lucky circumstances that made us meet, and basically there was no casting call, because when I met her, it was a done thing, and same goes with the florist who plays Remo.
Yeah.
For the two main characters, there was no casting done. Basically,
Okay.
there was a huge casting done for the rest of the very, very multiple roles there are, but for these two, no.
Okay, so like when you're developing it, like did you have a process while you're shooting, and like you're developing the film? Did you think about the actor, and like did you have any like development with that, with the actors, or like it was completely done and then you have given it, like how do you work with the actors?
Well, we started working very early, because once I knew that they were going to be the two main, roles of the film, I rewrote the script based on them, and this really helped us, because I guess 1 year before shooting, or at least nine months before shooting, they already had the final script, and we were already rehearsing a lot.
Right.
And that was really good, because I knew that if I can get Florist and Luana to really lift up everybody in terms of the mood that's going to be in the film, the levels of drama that are going to be in the film, I think they were going to do really the good job with the rest of the actors, and that really worked. So we started very much in advance.
Okay, okay. And let's move on to like my favorite part in the film, the photographic scape which you have built. I must say, like it's one of the bravest photographic film, like especially when it's come to lighting. So it's like if you talk about Jan's work, because it's kind of different from Jan's previous work,
Very
but
much,
I could
yeah.
see from your Lost Exile also, like you're not afraid to work with darkness, and you're not afraid to work with shadows.
Yeah.
And like what was the process with your cinematographer?
Well, Jan, to me, is someone who can pretty much do anything you want him to do, but also he can bring, his own touch, and that was very, I mean, it was a big lucky thing for me. And Jan has done very, very different things before, He can also do, Mignon, but he can also do the film he made with me, So he has a very wide range of working. And when it comes to shadows and night scenes, I guess this is just a specialty I have, of writing night scenes.
Right.
And then you're very lucky when you find a good DOP that can, bring to life something that
Yes.
has very little light in it.
Yeah, it's like, because I could see like, very Rembrandt effect, like,
Yeah.
you used, and a lot of practical lights.
Yeah, very much.
And also, like, if you see, like, I wanted to ask you specifically, the first time when Una decides, like, she's going to go to Remo in the night, and there's a, like, it's a love making scene,
Yeah.
and then you have kept like very little light,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, for
like,
sure.
it speaks so much, but like, was it planned to use like a lot of practical lights in the set,
Yeah.
the cinematographer, and how was the color grading process?
Well, the color grading process was done by one of Jan's, oldest colleague,
Okay,
because they've
okay.
been doing the films together.
Right,
You know,
right.
Jan films, and then he does the color grading.
Right.
So a lot of the time during the set, Jan was like, "We can use only practical lights because you know what, the guy who's going to do the color grading, he's a genius. So
Okay.
we can do whatever we want," and it was actually true.
Yeah, I think.
So that's really good when the DOP also knows, the color grading process,
Yeah,
and can tell you this we can and this we cannot do.
Yeah, I think it's hats off to the director for like trusting your DP, and like,
Yeah.
believing in that without getting afraid.
Yeah, right.
So, well, this is my, like, it's the last question. It's a quick one. Like the last scene of the film, when I was watching, it almost reflect me a very Tarkovskian touch, like, in the film Mirror, like where, like, Remo was sitting and Una was walking away,
yeah.
and I could see, like, very, like, it's mirroring the mirror of the film.
Very
Like,
much.
was there any inspiration?
Oh, of course, and absolutely have to admit it. Like, I think in this first film, and that's what I think a lot of directors should do actually, is put in a lot of their references,
Yeah.
and see how it works. And especially when you're trying to mirror the mirror,
Yeah.
you see how difficult it is to make it.
Yes.
And obviously you have to change it a little bit, because if you want to do the exact same thing, it's not going to work. You know?
Yeah.
But definitely,
Yes.
the mirror is a big reference to the film.
Well, Fisnik, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
bringing your film to PÖFF
I'm very
and
happy.
doing the world premiere. And I wish you all the best, and I wish you a great success in the festival circle
Thank
and a
you.
release of your film.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It
And
was a
ladies
pleasure.
and gentlemen, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap. And I'm Dhanushka from PÖFF TV.